Well, and it's not just sharing it with my family. It really is truly sharing aviation with as many people as I can.
Welcome into the Future in Flight podcast, where we explore the stories, the people, and the innovations that keep pushing aviation forward. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, a weekend warrior, or just someone who looks up every time they hear an engine overhead, this show is for you. I'm Sean Starker, coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where the freezer is nicely stocked with ice cream bars and you don't have to walk across the airfield for a bathroom. Today, we're diving into some incredible stories that prove aviation isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about passion, innovation, and the relentless human drive to soar higher. We'll meet people who've traded in careers for cockpits, explore aircraft that defy conventional wisdom, and uncover the moments in history that shaped the skies we fly today. So grab your headset, turn on noise canceling, and let's get this show in the air. The Future in Flight starts right here, right now. Picture this. You're a grown adult, reluctantly dragging yourself to your son's scouting event at the local airport. You've got a successful IT career, a family, the whole suburban dad thing down pat. The last thing you want to do right now is spend your day looking at airplanes. But then something happens. You see the aircraft up close, and suddenly a passion you'd buried decades ago comes roaring back to life. That's exactly what happened to Carl Hancock, and it completely rewrote his life story. Carl Hancock had lived the aviation dream once before, as a kid. He was one of those students who would drive 45 minutes to another school just to take an aviation class, even though it ate up most of his school day. But life has a way of redirecting our passions.
I always liked airplanes when I was a kid and really enjoyed them. In fact, whenever there was an extracurricular class or club that had to do with aviation, I actually joined it. And I remember there was one class that I went to that I literally had to drive 45 minutes to another school to be able to do, and then they took me back to my school. I don't even know why they allowed that because it took so much of my school day, but airplanes, and it was great. But as I started going through school and everything, started forgetting more and more about that, started getting on the normal path of life.
School, marriage, kids, IT career. Carl had it all figured out. By his late 30s, he was deep in the computer world, the kind of guy who'd been fixing tech problems since he was 17. Aviation? That was just a childhood memory collecting dust. But here's the thing about passion. Sometimes it lies dormant for decades, just waiting for the right moment to explode back into your life.
When my son was about 8 years old, he was inside of the Scout program, the Boy Scout program. And so we went to the airport, and they were doing a walk around of an airplane. I didn't want to go. I just didn't want to go. But my wife's like, you have to go. They have to be accompanied by an adult. Fine, I'll go adult.
So there's Carl, the reluctant dad milling about the airport that day, probably thinking about all the other things he could be doing. And then it happened.
Everything came back like a freight train and just hit me so hard.
Within days, Carl was at the airport every single day, just watching planes. He started pilot training, trading his IT income for flight lessons. But along the way, Carl noticed something that bothered him.
When you ask an instructor or a flight school, remember, they're there to make the money. And so their answers are always geared towards making money. But the true answer isn't about making money.
So Carl decided to become the guy giving those true answers. He started making YouTube videos sharing real information about what it actually takes to become a pilot. No sugarcoating, no sales pitches, just honest content for people like him who wanted to know what they were getting into.
Runway 3682, 2-way right, Echo, line up and wait.
Line up and wait, 2-way right, Echo, line up and 3682.
Here's where Carl's story takes an unexpected turn. Remember, this is a guy who is just trying to help a few people online. He made a video about something that terrifies most new pilots. Talking to air traffic control.
That original video is sitting out over 1.7 million views right now.
1.7 million. But Carl's being modest here. He admits that video wasn't exactly Emmy material.
Oh, I wasn't a good personality then. No. In fact, don't go watch that video. You'll be unimpressed.
That's the internet for you. Your awkward early work lives forever. But that video changed everything. Suddenly, Carl wasn't just helping a few people. He was reaching hundreds of thousands of future pilots around the world. And then came the decision that would change his family's life forever.
I started making similar money doing the YouTube that I was doing the IT work. And then when I started making as much money making YouTube videos about different topics and things that were going on, I decided, you know what, I don't need to be doing two things. There's too much going on.
So he quit, walked away from years of IT experience to become a full-time aviation content creator. His reason?
Because I hate computers now.
There's a lesson in there somewhere about following your passion before you start hating your day job. But Carl's biggest adventure was still ahead of him. Picture walking into an aircraft salvage yard, basically a graveyard for broken dreams and crushed planes. Most people would see junk. Carl saw opportunity.
They have a J3 Cub, and I'm like, that could be cool, but I didn't really want it certified. I was hoping for experimental because it's a lot easier to work on. So I went and I checked it out. First off, it wasn't yellow. It was red with white stripes. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then I found out it's experimental. And it's experimental because it didn't have the stock engine. It had one that was nearly double the horsepower. And they had clipped the wings. And so it made the entire wing an aileron so it would roll. And this airplane was set up for aerobatics. And
this wasn't just any Cub. This was a Cub that had been transformed into an aerobatic machine and then crashed. The salvage yard wanted $15,000 for it. Carl's logic was beautifully simple.
No matter what, if I buy this, I'm not upside down. If this video series flops, if I don't get any sponsors, if I can't rebuild this plane, I can always part it out.
So began the Red Rocket Restoration, a project that would teach Carl about aviation, frustrate him to no end, and create some of the most engaging content on his YouTube channel. But it also made him some enemies.
When I started reaching out to the J3 community for help on things, they're all like, you know what, strip the paint it yellow, take it back to certified, and then we can talk.
The purists were not happy. Here was this YouTuber with a red and white Cub that looked, in Carl's words, like a circus poster. But that's exactly what made it special. Now, Carl's not just about pretty planes and cool videos. He's serious about safety, and he's got the stories to prove it. Like the time he was doing touch and goes when his headset started beeping.
I take off, and I fly with the Delta Zulu headset, which has a built-in carbon monoxide sensor. And I'm downwind about midfield, and I get a carbon monoxide level high inside of my ear. So there was no warning, nothing else leading up to that, just carbon monoxide high. And I'm like, what? And so I immediately open my window, and I start smelling, and it's like, low lead you can't really smell. And I tried to put my finger on it, and it's almost like you haven't used the heater inside of your car or your furnace in your house all summer long, and the first time you run it, it kind of has that slight burning smell to it.
Most people might have panicked. Carl, he got curious.
So I close my window, and I wait about 10 seconds, and I push it, and it's like 10 ppm. I'm like, okay. Wait about 3 more seconds. Push it again, 20 ppm. Okay, that was a lot very quickly. Push the button again, 30 ppm. I'm like, okay, we're done with this flight. So I open the window again and come and land. If I had not been reading 0 with the window open, that would not have happened. What I wanted to do in that situation, and I'm sure that Lightspeed will love this, me saying it, I wanted to see how good their equipment was.
The lesson? Good equipment saves lives, and good judgment saves good equipment. One of the things I love most about Carl's story is how it's become a family affair. His 11-year-old daughter has become his little co-pilot, and if he goes flying without her...
And I can tell you that if she finds out there's an open seat in an airplane and I'm going flying and I don't take her out of school, cancel the doctor appointments, and take her flying, I get the silent treatment for about a week. She's 11 going on 15, and...
They've just bought another airplane, one where she can actually reach the pedals. Carl's planning to document her learning to fly, which would be incredible content. But more importantly, it's about sharing his passion with the people he loves most.
I mean, I fly with someone else more often than I fly by myself. I have very, very little solo time because of it. But it's just because I really want others to be able to see it, feel it, enjoy it.
And that's the heart of what Carl does through his YouTube channel, Fly With The Guys. It all comes back to his motto, share aviation wherever you can. Carl Hancock went from fixing computers to fixing airplanes, From IT guy to sky guy, from reluctant scout trip attendee to helping hundreds of thousands of people discover aviation, his story reminds us that sometimes the best career advice is simple. Follow what makes you want to get up every morning and drive to the airport instead of the office. If Carl's story inspired you, or if you want to see that infamous red rocket for yourself, check out Fly with the Guys on YouTube. And if you're thinking about learning to fly, well, Carl's got over 150 videos to help you figure out if it's right for you, and he promises to give you the real answers, not the sales pitch. Drone Cadets is on a mission to train the next generation of drone pilots and innovators. From hands-on drone flight to coding and career certifications, students as young as 8 learn real-world STEM skills. Whether in schools or on our one-of-a-kind drone bus, we're building futures one flight at a time. Learn more at dronecadets.com. That's dronecadets, all one word, .com. Picture this. You're sitting in what's basically a lawn chair with wings, 500 feet above the ground, going about as fast as you drive down a city street. No pilot's license, no registration, no medical exam. Just you, a tiny engine, and one big sky. Today, we're diving into the rebellious, beautiful, and surprisingly accessible world of ultralight aviation, where flying dreams meet young adult budgets. And the only requirement is the courage to leave the ground. Now, when the Federal Aviation Administration sat down in 1982 to figure out how to regulate these crazy contraptions that were basically motorized hang gliders, they did something pretty remarkable. They created Part 103. And I'm not kidding when I say the entire regulation fits on a single sheet of paper. Not often you can say that with government regulations. Think about it for a second. In a world where your iPhone's terms of service is longer than most novels, the FAA said, you know what? Some things should be fairly simple. So what exactly is an ultralight? It's a pretty broad category with numerous different designs. But no matter the design, the result has to weigh less than 254 pounds. That's about the same as a refrigerator, or 2 average teenagers. It can only hold 5 gallons of fuel, and it can't go faster than 63 miles an hour. Here's the mind-blowing part. You can legally fly one of these without any pilot training. None. Zero. The FAA basically said, hey, if you're brave enough to strap yourself to 254 pounds of aluminum and hope, last summer, I met Tyler, a 19-year-old from Indiana who saved up $7,000 working side gigs to buy a used ultralight. His friends thought he was, quote, insane, he told me. But they're spending that much or more on cars, and Ty gets to fly. Tyler's not alone. There's this whole underground community of young people who've discovered that while everyone else is arguing about student loans and whether they can afford a decent car, you can literally buy flight for the price of a few semesters worth of textbooks. But here's the catch. There's always a catch, right? You can only fly these things during daylight hours, and you absolutely cannot fly over cities, towns, or anywhere people gather. So if you live in downtown Manhattan, you're out of luck. But if you're in rural America or anywhere with open space, you've got access to the closest thing to superpowers that exists in 2025. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds incredibly dangerous, and I'm not going to lie to you. Strapping yourself to what essentially is a flying go-kart does come with some risks. But here's what's fascinating. The ultralight community has developed this incredible culture of safety and mentorship. Remember how I said no training is required? That's legally true, but practically speaking, the community won't let you near one of these things without proper instruction. There are organizations like the United States Ultralight Association that have created entire training programs. It's like they've built their own aviation school system completely outside of official channels. And the diversity of these machines is absolutely wild. You've got everything from traditional airplanes that look like they escaped from a 1920s barnstorming show, to weight shift trikes that are basically hang gliders with go-kart wheels, to powered parachutes that are exactly what they sound like, parachutes with engines attached. There are even ultralight helicopters, though most of them are too heavy to qualify for Part 103, which brings us to one of the most interesting loopholes in aviation, two-seat ultralights. Technically, they don't exist under Part 103. It's strictly single-seat only, but through a series of creative exemptions, flight schools can use two-seaters for instruction. So you can learn to fly in a 2-seat ultralight, but the moment you want to take your friend up for a joyride, you've crossed into the world of real aviation with all the licenses and regulations that come with it. But here's what gets me really excited about this whole scene. It represents something we don't see much of anymore. A space where individuals can still innovate, experiment, and push boundaries without a massive corporation or government agency breathing down their necks. Want to build an electric ultralight? Go for it. Want to try a weird new wing design? Have at it. As long as you stay under 254 pounds and follow basic safety rules, you're free to chase whatever crazy ideas bouncing around in your head. As long as we're talking safety, Part 103 allows for the additional weight of a ballistic recovery system, or BRS. It's a parachute designed to deploy in case of engine failure. And while adding one technically puts you over the 254-pound limit, the FAA makes an exception. The freedom of ultralights is attracting a new generation of young engineers, mechanics, and dreamers who might never have considered aviation otherwise. Because let's be real, traditional pilot training costs about as much as a college education, and buying a regular airplane costs more than many people's houses. Now, I'm not saying everyone should run out and buy an ultralight tomorrow. These machines demand respect, proper training, and a healthy understanding of your own limitations. But in a world where it feels like every frontier has been mapped, every mountain climbed, every ocean crossed, there's still this one realm where a teenager with determination, a summer job, and access to basic flight training can literally rise above it all. The sky, as it turns out, is still the limit. It's just a lot more accessible than you might think. Up next, a look at some historical milestones for the month of June. It's time for another This Month in Aviation History. June. It's the month of graduations, summer vacations, and apparently some absolutely mind-blowing moments in aviation history. I mean, we're talking about flights that changed the world, battles that shifted the course of history, and yes, even a guy who tried to airmail himself across the country. Yeah, I'm not kidding about that last one. So buckle up, or should I say buckle in, because we're about to take off on a journey through time that'll have you looking at the skies a little differently. Let's start our flight with June 4th, 1919. Picture this. Two British pilots, Captain John Alcock and Lieutenant Arthur Whitten Brown, are sitting in what's basically a World War I bomber, a Vickers Vimy, staring across the Atlantic Ocean from Newfoundland. The Atlantic. You know, that massive body of water that had been the ultimate you can't get there from here barrier for, most of human history. But these guys, they looked at 1,950 miles of open ocean and said, "Hold my tea." For 16 hours and 27 minutes, they battled fog so thick they couldn't see their own wings, ice that kept forming on their aircraft, and engines that kept threatening to quit. Brown, the navigator, had to literally climb out onto the wings mid-flight to chip ice off the instruments, while flying, over the Atlantic. When they finally spotted the coast of Ireland and crash-landed in what they thought was a nice, soft field, but turned out to be a bog, they had done something that seemed impossible just hours before. They had flown directly across the Atlantic Ocean without stopping. This wasn't just a cool stunt. This flight proved that long-distance air travel was possible. It planted the seed for everything from Charles Lindbergh's solo flight 8 years later to the international flights you might take today.
Because I'm sweet on candy, and candy's sweet on me.
Now, let's jump forward to June 4th and 5th, 1942, and shift our scene to the South Pacific. The United States is still reeling from Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese Navy seems unstoppable. But American codebreakers have been working overtime, and I mean literally cracking secret Japanese messages. And they discovered something huge. Japan was planning a massive attack on Midway Island. The Americans had a choice, run and hide, or use this intelligence to set up the ultimate ambush. They chose option 2. Picture this battle like the ultimate game of hide and seek, except the stakes are the entire Pacific War. Three American aircraft carriers, the Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, positioned themselves to surprise the Japanese fleet. When Japanese planes took off to attack Midway, leaving their carriers vulnerable, American dive bombers swooped in and in just 5 minutes sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. 4 carriers, 5 minutes. The same ships that attacked Pearl Harbor were now at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. This battle didn't just turn the tide of World War II in the Pacific. It showed the world that naval aviation, planes launching from ships in the middle of the ocean, was going to be the future of warfare. The age of the battleship was coming to an end. The age of the aircraft carrier had begun. And who can forget D-Day, June 6, 1944? It was the largest invasion in human history and the beginning of the end of World War II. But let's take a breather from world-changing battles and talk about something a little closer to home. June 12, 1955. A small aircraft manufacturer in Kansas is about to test fly what would become the most successful airplane in general aviation history, ever. The Cessna 172 Skyhawk took its first flight that day, and honestly, it probably didn't seem like a big deal at the time. It was just a simple 4-seat, single-engine plane with tricycle landing gear. You know, with mains and a nose wheel in front instead of a tail wheel that makes planes want a ground loop. But here's the thing about the 172. It was almost boringly reliable. And in aviation, boring is beautiful. It was easy to fly, easy to maintain, and easy to afford, relatively speaking. Within a year, Cessna was building over 1,400 of them annually. Fast forward to today, and over 44,000 Cessna 172s have been built. That's more than any other aircraft in history. If you've ever taken a flying lesson, there's a really good chance it was in a 172. If you've ever seen a small plane at a local airport, there's a really good chance it was a 172. This airplane has taught more people to fly than any other aircraft in the world. Sometimes the machines that change the world aren't the fastest or the flashiest. Sometimes they're just the ones that work day after day, year after year. Now, before we land this segment, I promise you the story about a guy who tried to airmail himself, and I always keep my promises. June 1st, 1925, a car dealer in San Francisco, and I really wish I knew his name because this guy was clearly ahead of his time in terms of viral marketing, covered himself in $718 worth of stamps. In 1925 money, that's like covering yourself in about $12,000 worth of stamps today. His plan? Get mailed via airmail from San Francisco to New York. Because apparently in 1925, this seemed like a reasonable business strategy. The United States Post Office took one look at this stamp-covered car salesman and said, absolutely not. Which honestly was probably the right call. But it shows you how fascinated people were with this new thing called airmail. The idea that you could put a letter on an airplane and have it delivered across the country in days instead of weeks was absolutely revolutionary. And that's your journey through June's aviation history. From ocean-crossing pioneers to world-changing battles, from the most successful training aircraft ever built to a guy who really wanted to experience airmail firsthand. The common thread through all these stories? People who looked at the impossible and said, yeah, but what if we tried anyway? Whether it's crossing an ocean, winning a war, building the perfect training aircraft, or, well, mailing yourself, aviation history is full of people who refuse to accept limitations. That's all for this month's journey through aviation history. Remember, every flight, historical or not, starts with someone brave enough to leave the ground. And that brings us to the end of another Future in Flight podcast. From innovative aircraft designs to the passionate people who dedicate their lives to aviation, these stories remind us why we fell in love with flight in the first place. You know, every episode we produce reinforces something I truly believe, that aviation isn't just an industry or a hobby. It's a community. It's mechanics and pilots, engineers and dreamers, all united by the simple fact that we refuse to be earthbound. Whether you're already part of this community or you're just discovering it, I want to hear from you. If today's episode inspired you, motivated you, or maybe even convinced you to take that first flying lesson you've been thinking about, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback doesn't just help other people find the show, it helps us understand what stories matter most to you. And here's the thing, every review, every subscription, every time you share the episode with a friend, you're helping us spread the word that aviation's future is brighter than ever. You're helping us reach that next person who might become the pilot, engineer, or innovator who changes everything. Thank you for flying with us today. Thank you for being part of this incredible community. Thank you for believing, like we do, that the best stories happen in aviation. Until next time, we'll see you out there and up there.